Chief guest of today's function, Mr. P. Nandakumaran, Managing Director, State Bank of Travancore, Founder President of Calicut Management Association, Mr. V.K.S. Menon, Past President, Mr. P.K. Ahmed, Secretary, Mr. Ashik, Mr. Amarnath, distinguished guests from State Bank of Travancore, members of Calicut Management Association, ladies and gentlemen. The theme of Calicut Management Association for the current year is contributing to nation building by igniting the passion to excel. We started the current year in the month of July 2011 by organizing a leadership workshop for all the ministers of Kerala in association with Indian Institute of Management, Kozhikode. All the activities that we have done during the current year were in line with the theme that we had identified. Another activity that we had done during the current year, which is still ongoing, is the series of talk called My Life, My Message. We have identified about 30 very successful people who have come up from ordinary background to astonishing heights, working mostly in Kerala. Generally, among the young people of Kerala, there is a feeling that Kerala is not the right place for entrepreneurship or for investments. We wanted to change that attitude. We wanted young people who are currently based outside Kerala, working for multinationals, working for big corporates, working in the computer industry, working in other industries. We wanted them to look at Kerala as an investment option when they think of investment, when they think of entrepreneurship. That objective, we thought we'll do the series of talk, and we would also, to reach them properly the way we want, we thought we'll upload these talks on YouTube and Facebook and in all medias connected with the net. That has started giving us results. During the course of the year, we started off this series with Kochowsep Chitlapalli, and during the course of the year, we have had speakers like Shashi Tharoor, Chris Gopalakrishnan, K.M. Chandrasekhar, former cabinet secretary, and many others. And all these talks we have uploaded in YouTube and in Facebook. And I'm happy to say, as on yesterday, our viewership on YouTube had crossed 9,200, which means even though we are limited to the auditorium that we are organizing the talk, using the net, using the social media, we were able to reach a bigger audience. We were able to reach our target customers, the kind of people whom we wanted to see. We wanted to see this program, and we have been fairly successful in that. And the numbers that we have achieved so far, the number of 9,200, which is growing day by day. I think today, if we look, the number would have another 200 or 300 would have added, and that is, I'm sure, making young people think of coming back to Kerala, investing in Kerala, or thinking of making Kerala their future destination. Today, we have to address us. We have here Mr. P. Nandakumaran, Managing Director of State Bank of Travancore. And thanks to our past President, Mr. P.K. Ahmed, he had been the only reason why we have got Mr. P.K. Nandakumaran here. Mr. Nandakumaran is a very, very busy person, and only Mr. P.K. Ahmed's persuasion has convinced Mr. Nandakumaran to come here today. I'm sure Mr. P.K. sure Mr. P.K. Ahmed would be one of Mr. Nandakumaran's biggest customer in this part of the world.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. President of Calicut Management Association, Sri Roshan Kainadi, Secretary Sri K.P. Ashik, past President and my good friend Sri P.K. Ahmed, Founder President Sri V.K.S. Menon, immediate past President Sri Mr. Sagir, Mr. P.V. Gangadharan, Sri T. Balkrishnan, my colleague on the Director Board of SBT, my friends, invited audience, and my own colleagues in large number here. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm not very sure whether I would ever be able to meet the expectations of a learned audience like this. Because though Mr. Ahmed, in his introduction, gave a lot of platitudes about me, I'm very, very aware of my limitations. And that's been one of the reasons I have never been very friendly to public functions. And an occasion like this demands that I speak for a fairly longish period of time. I know I will never be able to beat Mr. V.K. Krishnan Menon's marathon speech. But I think I would be expected to do probably 1/10 of that. Now I hope I'll be able to reach that level. And this is a great city. As Mr. Ahmed said in the introduction, I have an umbilical cord connection with this city. The sense that my grandfather was a practicing advocate in Kozhikode or Calicut in those days. My mother was born here, and by the time I was born, she had become part of the Vattaparambil family, which is also connected with the great institution here, Mathrubhumi, because Bhaskar Menon, who is a cousin of my father, is the director of Mathrubhumi. So a lot of connections. So now I will keep on counting. There will be at least 25 relatives in this city. So I will not count that. But rest assured, I have a very fond and very vibrant connection with the city of Calicut. So it's doubly a pleasure to be here. I was looking at some of the words spoken. I think the introduction probably overdid a lot of my capabilities, overdid a lot of my abilities. So, but then these are normally happening, you know, when somebody is introduced, people like to be pleasant to the invitee. So I will leave it at that. But one point which struck me very valuable was that Calicut is an important center for my bank, for State Bank of Travancore. So Mr. Roshan was telling me, no, probably he will be very happy to be here because the persuasion of Ahmed Ka. That's true. Ahmed Ka himself is a very persuasive person, and in terms of his business also very persuasive to us. But I also tell you that he is not only one. When I look at my top business connections, Calicut has at least half a dozen of them. It's a very, very important place for me. Some of them are here. Some of these connections are historically relevant, starting with the days of independence. And some of them are recent, but As you know, this is a city which is extremely good and hospitable. Vasco da Gama came here because Calicut was a bustling port in those days. And through Calicut, he discovered India. That is what I understand. So history is sometimes a big, heavy weight on our present, but many times history liberates. So I think in case of Calicut, the history probably liberates. So a happy occasion. The topic given to me is one of the things, in the sense that the topic given to me is that my life, my message. In fact, if I am given an opportunity to truthfully speak about this, I would barely be able to speak for 3 minutes. But as a speaker, I have a responsibility, so I cannot say that, my life is only this much and my message is only this much. So I think I will have to dwell something on it. This is a very, very powerful message or topic. If I recollect correctly, it was Mahatma Gandhi who at some point of his various activities and travels and deliberations across the country actually told people that if you want to have a message from me, take me, my life is my message. So, and I worked a lot of time, as in the introduction it was mentioned, in Gujarat. So I had a lot of experience of what happened in Gujarat, the good things and the bad things. So this thing. But I do believe that Mahatma Gandhi was really a person who stood for what is right with courage, and every moment he actually did breathe that message into his life till his last breath. So it is with a feeling of profoundness and real fear that I stand here to talk about this. Little bit about me, because if I need to talk about my message, I will have to talk about my life. So the first introduction I did give you, that I had a connection with Kozhikode. My mother was born here, and I, despite the pretentious connections and all that, I think I grew up in a very ordinary family with very ordinary beginnings. I had the privilege of being probably the best student in the class during the initial period, so which made certain that I kept on getting certificates in the school annual functions, and with a mother who was pushy and wanted to make certain that the children get the best of opportunities. It so happened in my case that I was pushed into participating in various kinds of competitions. The good thing for me was that I am not a very athletic type. I was most of the time sickly. Maybe I was lucky to survive probably at the age of 3 and overcame that illness that was there. So I wasn't encouraged as a child to go out and play with other youngsters. So that meant that I started having a class fairly early. I also was thickly into reading books, and it also meant that I read more than what a child of my age used to do. In effect, a precocious childhood, and also an access to a good set of library. So it encouraged me to read about topics which were not relevant as a student. In the process, I picked up more general knowledge than most of the other children. So there were quiz programs and all that. I had the benefit of standing first without any doubt. So that is how it started. It also meant that in the school programs, I was expected to stand up and speak. And that is one reason I do not like long speeches, because at the end of 3 minutes, my feet even now start to give way. So here it is easy, at least I have a podium to catch. Yeah, but then I had that benefit of competing in areas where I could actually show some kind of capability. So, to some extent, I was good in talking about various topics. So that was there, and I had a fairly good academic career. So, did very well as a school student. I did very well as a college student, and somewhere down the line, as I became a teenager, I lost weight. So at that time, what happens? A rebel is normally born when you are 16. Somebody was telling, if you are a teenager and a romantic, that is good. If you are 16, if you are 16 and a romantic, that is good. If you are 60 and still a romantic, then you should be short. So I am somewhere in that second stage now, nearing 60. I still do not know whether I am still a romantic, but definitely at 16 I was a romantic. And romantic in those days meant that you would be influenced by the film and the movie stars of the day. We had enough of those heroes, Dilip Kumar, Raj Kapoor, Prem Nazir, Satyan and all that. And cigarette smoking was very popular. That was the way to show that you had arrived. So without my parents knowing about it, I got into smoking cigarettes and gave a lot of worldly pleasures because cigarettes became more important. So, but in the process, I gained friends. Because if you want to smoke cigarettes, you cannot be in the classroom. So I started skipping classes. And since you are going to smoke cigarette, you have to have some friend to stand by you. So you pick new friendships, which are also people like you who would skip classes. So I became fairly good in skipping classes. In the process, I became a poor student after being one of the best students in my school days and early college days. So I was very, very lucky at some point of time that I still had some native intelligence in me to make certain that I will write the exam and I will still pass it. So that is how I completed college. I qualified with 50% marks from Calicut University in its first batch of graduates with exactly 50% marks, probably due to moderation. And that was very important, passing that exam with 50%, because there is a lot of things in life which I leave it to serendipity. Serendipity, if you really look at the dictionary meaning, it means a fortuitous accident. And I believe a good number of things which in my life has happened is probably serendipitous. And this was the first, because I somehow passed my BA exam with 50% exact marks. That importance came up 2 years later as I was doing my MA, because I was lucky enough to be selected to appear and join an MA course. So as I was doing my MA course at that time, this advertisement came. State Bank of India was looking for probationary officers. One of my friends said, why don't we write this exam? I said, why does it matter? He said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to us whether we will pass this exam. It doesn't matter to us whether we will get selected, but it's experience. Because after this, we are going to spend next 3 or 4 years writing entrance exams and selection exams for various jobs. So why don't we start and picking up experience? So there are the bout of serendipity. I also applied. And the qualifying mark was exactly 50. They said you have to be a second class graduate, and I was at the cusp. 1 mark less, I would not have qualified. So I wrote the exam. In between, I was actually very active in college in various other things. I was a fledgling poet. Fortunately for all the people who love literature in Kerala, I gave up. I tried to act. I was so much ham-handed, you know. So people said, good that you stop acting. I tried to become a student leader. Nobody would accept me as a leader. So did a lot of things basically to draw attention to myself in whatever way I could. Acquired a few friends who gave me some focus later. So in the process, with the help of one of these friends, I actually went and decided to apply for the job of a probationary officer in a bank. And sometime later, I got an application to be filled up and said that you attend a written test at somewhere. I attended that. To my surprise, I got called for an interview. I attended that interview. And what do they ask? You know, an interview board trying to recruit a fresh graduate barely out of college, or in my case, not even out of college. You have to be made into officer quality. What kind of questions will they ask? Very interesting questions were asked. So what would be the length of the Narmada Dam or something like that? But I was lucky because I had a lot of irrelevant facts always, you know, in my memory. So I could answer that. And the best question I got was that, what is the significance of your name? I said, my name is Nand Kumaran. It is Lord Krishna's name. So you tell me what is something, you know, important about Lord Krishna. And I being myself and thinking only about beautiful women, I said Krishna had 16,008 wives. So that was good. They said, okay, we cannot expect you to talk about 16,000 names, but at least you can tell me 8 names. And I being my stupid self, I said, Subhadra. And I don't know anybody who knows Mahabharata and Bhagavad would know that Subhadra was not Krishna's wife, was Krishna's sister. So I became an officer in State Bank of India after that interview because I didn't know who was Krishna's wife and who was Krishna's sister. So that is the third level of serendipity. So that is how it started. But after that, let me tell you, unlike Krishna, I had been very loyal to my first calling, which is to be a banker. I did not re-engage with any other bank after that. I stayed within the State Bank of India, except for this last tenure. Here I have been seconded. My career took a different turn because what does a BA English literature student add as value to banking? The only thing you can do is to write good English. And good English don't make good bankers. So I had to rediscover myself. And that was the time I had this friend. His name is Harry. He was one of my friends in my college days. And he was one of very active rebel in those days, very much involved in what is now known as the Naxalite movement. Was a very good friend of mine. We used to have intellectual discussions and probably arguments. Thank you. And that was the time of emergency. I joined in 1975. On July 26th or something, emergency was declared. June 26th, emergency was declared. I joined State Bank of India on 18th August. And a month later, into my training, I was sent to Gujarat. I was there, and Gujarat was supposed to be a safe haven for the people who were opposing emergency in those days. And the other safe haven was supposed to be what is today known as Tamil Nadu. Because these two states had local governments or state governments which were not very favorable to the central government. It so happened that after about 1.5 months of my joining the bank, one early morning, there was a knock on my door. I was in a shared accommodation in a small town in Gujarat. And I opened the door and find my old friend Harry there, slightly worried because he was actually running away from a probable arrest. So he came to me, and I had the fortune of giving him help and support, in the sense that we had these short periods of training. So I was in that town, Kalol, for about 4 months. So about 2.5 months he was there with me. And by that time, I being the bibliotechnic, I see that bibliophile. I being the bibliophile, I had a passion for buying books, not for reading them. So I had kept on buying books. So by the time, Harry also had a passion for books, but he actually read them, not buy them. So after about a month there, one day Harry told that, you have a nice collection. I said, yeah, I have a nice collection because I select my books very carefully. He said, but then you have no focus. So I said, why do you say that? You say that you have everything. You have a book on meaning of art. You have another book on being and nothingness. You have another book on Perry Mason. You have some book by James Joyce. You have a poem by Yeats. What is it that you like? I said, I like everything. So he said, no. If you like everything, you get lost. So I took my first management lesson from him, saying that life doesn't come from serendipity. It comes from focus. So thereafter, I decided that I will buy books only on certain types of likings I had. Therefore, I decided I'm not going to read novels anymore. He said, that's not sufficient. Because if you don't read novels, okay, you are going to read some serious books, but you still need a huge number of other books, and still you will be finding it difficult, because if you try to read on neurosciences, you try to read on something else also, the focus will not be this thing. So be focused. And I tried to be focused. And at that time, another friend happened to meet me, who still stays in the State Bank of India. And Harry had to move, and I had to move, because my training at that center became complete, and I had to move on to another place. And he also found a way of running away from whatever investigation he was facing. And that was the time I decided that if you want to be a good banker, you have to learn about banking. So unlike the others, I started learning about accountancy. And I found that I was fairly good in accountancy. So I said it's easy. So I passed accountancy and all, made myself ready for the proceedings, what is needed in the bank to grow and get promoted. And over the next few years, I got a lot of assignments. I was given some hardship postings, some villages, some good towns, some natural calamities, some civil commotions, some promotions, and all that. So after all that I have reached in my career, I have found a lot of variety, because the banking, unlike everybody else, unlike what all people think, banking actually gives you a huge amount of challenges, huge amount of variety. First of all, it's a services industry. So you have to meet people, you have to deal with people, you have to talk to people, you have to understand people, you have to solve their problems, you have to gain their acceptance, you have to get their approval, you have to get their happiness. That is banking, through transactions, through financial transactions. And it's very difficult to satisfy people with financial transactions, because every financial transaction has a profit motive. That is why that transaction happens. It won't be there on one side or the both sides, but underlying every financial transaction, there is a profit motive. So it also meant that you have to ensure that the profit motive remains satisfied whenever you fulfill a financial transaction. And I realized this sometime during my stint as an officer handling small scale industries. After that initial, training periods and doing branches, being responsible for administering a small branch, then dealing with analytical aspects in a head office and all that, I was sent to a branch saying that this is basically, you have a skill for knowing what good credit is. You can write nice English. You can also do some reasonably good arithmetic work. So based on that, I was given one of the thriving industrial estates in Ahmedabad city to manage. And that's where I realized that what brings business to you is this capability to understand the profit motive and to satisfy the profit motive of your client. And a good amount of work happened there. So I believe that second point was an understanding of what client satisfaction meant. That was my second management lesson. Thereafter, I went through a lot of this thing. All the postings, I would say, that were basically a pursuance of the same. And you acquire friends. We acquire friends because you show them concern. You acquire a team because you show them concern. You maintain your team, you maintain your friend because you share and they share your concern. And plain English, you call it teamwork. The third lesson I learned was that sometimes you cannot do everything yourself. And to be a team player, you have to trust others. And the moment I started trusting others, I started getting people to respond to me. And that probably was the reason for my success in the initial days. The auditor friends here, if you are there, they would try to tell me, our motto is slightly different. Our motto is that trust but verify. As a banker, our motto was never trust. Because every person in the world is out there to cheat you. So this fact, in the State Bank of India, where I was growing up as an officer, the rule was that a transaction is completed only after it goes through 4 different people at the end of the day. In the morning, you want to deposit 100 rupees, you go to the counter, you get your slip verified by the counter clerk, you go to a cashier, you deposit the money with the cashier, he will verify everything, put the money, the cashier sends the voucher to a deputy or head cashier, who will confirm that the cashier received the money and the particulars are right. It will come back to the account department. Through another confirmation, there is a receipt clerk. From there, it will go to an officer who will authenticate. They will go back to the clerk who actually you first met. It doesn't stop there. Now he will put it in the ledger, and this ledger and the book will go to another officer, who will now say that I have checked this, it is correct. He will put an initial there. If you think it is N, it is the N, you are wrong. Now all these vouchers will get written by somebody as a day book, and that will be checked by one person, one writing, one checking, and the third person will take this and physically check it with the ledger again. It meant in this organization, you will not trust you will not trust your father, you will not trust your mother, you will not trust your wife, you will not trust your daughter, you will not trust your son. Trust was the first casualty in a banking transaction. I do not know, Mr. Balkrishna will agree with this, I suppose. Right. But if you want teamwork, you need a trust. And that was not the same as the trust which was there in the banking term. We have a long tradition of trust as State Bank of Travancore. And that trust obviously happens because we have layers and layers and layers of verification. So an auditor is right, trust but verify. But if you're a manager, if you trust and you verify and you trust and you verify, you will never get anywhere. So you have to pick people. You have to decide who you trust. You have to decide who you do not trust. Who you trust with what work you can do. What is the capability, and also you get into a business of judging trust. And probably the best lesson of those early days was that I became fairly adept in this business of judgment of what to trust, who to trust, and through that how to build teamwork. An interesting experience. And during that period there were a lot of things. I think you also need a bit of courage. A lot of things happened. I think I will not talk about most of these incidents. One was about the riots in Ahmedabad. Right in front of my branch. This was happening. There was a crowd. And the crowd was saying that they are not happy with somebody and they suspect that person has gotten inside the bank. And I had a responsibility, I was the manager, to stop that crowd from lynching that person. And we closed the door, and me and another friend who was there in the branch, we stood outside. We said, you may have your problems, but you cannot get inside. You needed courage to do that. And courage sometimes is momentary. You don't know that you have that capability. I think 25 years now almost, or 27 years now. I think that moment of courage probably defined because it represented to the people in that branch and probably through them to the rest of the organization that I will stake my principles, but I will not give them up. So that was one point of courage. I had to show the courage and face up to that and make certain, and fortunately for us, maybe the crowd was not violent enough and all, they went back and that particular problem got solved. And I think in terms of creating the right amount of trust with people in the branch and the kind of customers who were there at that particular point of time, I think it was a big gain for me. A point where my courage got demonstrated. I really hope that it doesn't get demonstrated too many times. But I would say that when it had to be demonstrated, I probably passed that test. So that was a very important point for me. Then I think the typical career happens, but somehow in 97, I think Mr. Ahmed, when he was introducing me, talked about moving to the corporate center in 1997. That was the time I had actually got a change in the way I work, because till 97 I was a typical bank officer. My job was to do what is today known as the day-to-day banking or the retail and services banking. I never had an opportunity to think about bank from a top-down level. If I have to rethink the bank, and if this bank had to become different from what it is today, you don't normally get an opportunity in your banking career to do that. I was very fortunate. In 97, I was put in the asset liability management department of the State Bank of India. Why it was different? Because it was a fledgling science. Number two, nobody in banking system in India knew anything about it. Third, I was given the opportunity because somebody thought that I have an ability to think. I don't know how they got that knowledge. But now I know after a long number of years that probably that selection was crucial for me. Whether it was right for the bank, jury can still be out. But it made me look at banking in a different light. Look at banking as a macroeconomic activity. Look at banking as fulfillment of a risk to return objective. Look at banking as structuring and taking strategic decisions. And it also needed me to look at very poor data capabilities in the banking system in those days. When you look at any kind of decision making, you can be three types of decision makers. You can be analytical, you will need data, you can collect data, you can keep on adding data, and sometimes you will reach a decision, sometimes you get into what is known as analysis paralysis. And I was at a stage, the only solution open to a self-respecting analyst was analysis paralysis. That was the only one, because there wasn't enough data to do anything. The second is that you become inductive. You do, in this thing. You get information, it is incomplete. So you start looking at data and see how you can use this information and see that how it can be in some way imagine and improve on it and to try to use what is parameters and do that logically, do that with certain amount of forward thinking. So you can be, you can impute qualities and features into the data and you do that and then you do that. So I got the position where actually I had to work on incomplete data. I had to work on data which was imperfect. I got data which was not there sometimes. And then I was supposed to make some kind of analysis. So then we did a little bit here, a little bit there and started working on it. And at the end, my best moment came when it was Mr. Jiji Vaidya. He was, before he became the chairman of SBI, he was actually MD of State Bank of Travancore. So in some way I share a lineage with him. And he was the chairman and he wanted some decision. It happened that RBI was changing the interest rate and he had an information that RBI probably could be increasing the bank rate by 0.5%. And he said, what would be the impact of it? And somewhere down the line, somebody told him that if you want to have some information on it, sir, why don't you talk to Nand Kumar? He may have some answer to it. I don't know why my name was suggested, but apparently somebody had taken my work seriously enough and felt that it merited, mention to the chairman. So my success as an inductive analyst happened that moment, because on a Saturday, Monday, the RBI was to come out with the rate change. Saturday evening, 7 o'clock. I mean, I think any of us at that point of time of career would have been a wonderful experience. Somebody calls up at your home and says that chairman would like to speak to you. Obviously, I stood up for the next 15 minutes listening to him. I dared not sit down. But what he wanted is that Nandkumaran, there is a point. Supposing RBI changes the interest rates by 0.5%, what would be its impact on the balance sheet of State Bank of India? And that Saturday night, next morning, on my PC, I had just bought my first personal computer. That was as a passion at that time. So I worked with some Excel formulas and did something. Went back to the office, collected some more data, whatever I had. And at 11:30 on Sunday morning, I was at the chairman's house and gave him a worksheet, saying that, sir, this is the figures I am producing. I do not know whether the figures were ever right. I do not know whether they had any sense, but apparently they were looking authentic enough for the chairman to pat my back. So I probably owe my next promotion, my posting to Canada, my recognition in the bank, to a bit of deductive, inductive, analytical reasoning. But it meant that you can make sensible, comprehensible, what you call forecast, even if you do not have the full gamut of data. And that's something I believe, because in banking system, for example, our State Bank of Travancore is a bank with 1 crore, 10 million customers. So if you want to take a decision on something which is affecting this bank, do you have to actually go study every little customer's transaction needs? Do you have to have that kind of analytical system, or can you take a sample, or can you take a general view saying that it looks like this? If you blow it up, something will be here, something will be here. So I believe that the data, once you understand how the data looks like and how you can analyze it, you can actually think strategically with that. And that was one point. You need data, but you should not be its slave. Data, because the banking is full of data. So I learned another management lesson there, that you can make a name by dealing with half-baked data and not by being its slave. And that brings you promotions. So on that basis, I went to Canada. In Canada, I suddenly became a retail banker. 1975 to 1978, I was in training and learning. 1978 to 1997, I was the acknowledged expert in most of Gujarat on dealing with small scale industry. 1997 to 2000, I was an analyst doing strategic thinking and producing numbers for the chairman. 2000, I got selected and was sent to State Bank of India's Canadian subsidiary, and I became a retail banker. I had two great advantages when I went to Canada. One, in State Bank of India, anybody promoted as a deputy GM was given, in those days, an ambassador car with a driver. So I became the first DGM in the State Bank of India without a car or a driver, because I was posted to Canada. Second, in State Bank of India, no senior officer worth his salt will ever sign a draft. And in Canada, all the drafts are above 50,000 rupees or equivalent if the value of the dollar given is $1,000. And most of the people used to send $2,000. So all drafts needed a second signature. And everybody will come to me saying that please sign the draft. So I became the only DGM in the State Bank of India who was signing drafts. Two major achievements. But it also made me a retail banker for the first time. Because I was dealing with remittances, I was dealing with personal finances. I was expected to tell people what is the opportunity in India and whether I should keep this money here in Canada or should I send it as an NRI deposit to India. If I keep it in India, what are my advantages? Is India really growing, or is it a temporary phenomenon? Good questions and all that. And actually I had to start learning to be a retail banker. And there is an advantage of being a retail banker in North America, because North America is the place where consumer is the king. We were in a city, we were in a country where if you want a wedding dress, you can go and buy it in the morning, wear it to your wedding, and after that go back and say that I am not satisfied and take full refund. Right. So it meant whatever you do, the consumer is the king. Good training in knowing how to deal with people, how to understand their expectations, how you can make certain that you don't have to give back what they gave you. So this was the training. So I became a retail banker in Canada, and I continued. And I also had to manage a balance sheet because I had to do, as I say, in 2003 I became the president of the company. So I was responsible for the financial decisions. And I think we gave that particular subsidiary up to that time the best performance in that year, because we actually started understanding that the only reason for us to be in Canada was not merely to be good in signing drafts. We had some more things to do. And we actually built up. And I had a good officer who said that I can go to business because there is this bill, this company in India who wants to borrow money. But how will I get money? He said, I will ask him, how much money? So somewhere the swagger comes, somebody you don't like. He says that I don't think you can do it. But then if you could raise the resources, I could lend. Then I said, I really want to test whether, whether this swagger is right or something like that. So you get into a swagger, I cannot be beaten. How do you think? I think that. So I got into that personal ego kind of a thing. I said, we will raise the money. And we started raising retail deposits. And we found very innovative ways of doing. Because that was the time the Reserve Bank of India for the first time allowed non-residents to sell property in India and send it abroad. It was also the time a lot of Indian students started going abroad for studies. And the number of immigrants which they were allowing from India to countries like Canada, US, actually that number also went up. Which all meant that every day, instead of sending remittance to India, we also started seeing what is known as SWIFT messages, confirmation saying that we have transferred so much to so-and-so, transferred so much to so-and-so. I set up the first call center of SBI. We started ringing up those people, saying that your money is here, your money is with SBI Canada. By the time we transfer this money to your bank, which could be Royal Bank of Canada, it could be the Citibank, it could be HSBC, and you actually start getting interest from them, it will be another 6 days or 7 days. Please keep the money with us. We have a minimum deposit period of 30 days. You would keep the deposit with us for 30 days. And we will give you the rate of interest from the day it is transferred from India. I had a huge sales advantage. We built our first 100 million of deposits. We built our first 150 million of deposits that way. And in the process, I found out that 75% of the customers were lazy customers. They never called up and said that, please don't renew, transfer the money. We did auto renewal, they were happy with auto renewal. So we also kept the money. Theoretically, they were all 30-day deposits. They stayed with us for 3 months, they stayed with us 6 months, they stayed with us for 18 months. By the time I left, they stayed with us for 2 years, 75%. So I learned that if you dazzle the people at the first instance, they remain dazzled. like Mr. Ahmad Khan. So that was a good lesson for me. So I think there is something, a bit of that Steve Jobs kind of a thing. He says that try for perfection, give the best thing, and people will finally come to you, right? So, and he also said that somewhere in between, even if you open my machine inside, even it will be painted white. Everything will be in array. There will be a single chip will not be out of place. It would be the most beautiful design you would ever see. And somebody asked him, why do you want to have this like that? No customer, no user is going to ever see that. He says the technician will see it. And he has to admire Apple for what it is, right? And that is dazzling people. And I learned that if you want to excel in retail banking, and whether you call 100 crores of lending retail banking or not, if you want to excel, if you want to retain, if you want to capture customer, you have to dazzle people. And that lesson I learned in Canada, because that was the best place to learn this lesson. So I was lucky, serendipity again. Call from chairman, he gets some information, half-baked, whatever be it, he gets impressed, he says that this boy has to be given a foreign posting as a reward. And it so happens that the person who has to do was my boss as GM, who decided where I should go. He said, goodbye Nand Kumar, and let him go to Canada. So I got it, purely, no effort on my side, serendipity. But I learned the best lesson in retail banking I could ever learn them. If you want to be a good banker in retail, be ready to dazzle people. And we did that. We built up the biggest ever balance sheet of State Bank of Canada those days. And the next chairman was Mr. Purwar. And I remember one of those conferences of foreign office CEOs of State Bank of India. And he picked up two of us, saying that, these are relatively younger people, but if you want to do banking in a foreign country, he called me out by name, and there was another colleague of mine, Mrs. Soundara Kumar, she is now a Deputy MD of State Bank of India. He said, you have to learn. They have done the right thing. So once again, approval from the chairman meant that I get the next promotion, but I had to come back to India. I went to Orissa. Orissa was very different. Orissa is poor. I went to Orissa and I met somebody. I said, I am from Kerala. Oh, you are coming from a very rich country. So I was aghast. I said, how can Kerala be a rich country? But it took me some time to realize that indeed we in Kerala are very fortunate, and we are indeed very rich. Rich with people, rich with culture, rich with capabilities, rich with ambition. And if you are not rich with ambition, you cannot reach anywhere. I learned that lesson, that true richness comes because you are rich in ambition. That lesson I learned in Orissa. And if you are not rich in ambition, richness in knowledge, richness in culture, richness in heritage, richness in resources, nothing means anything. Right? So that is how I moved into that. So I decided, yes, if I am in Orissa and if I have learned this lesson, I have to. UTI Bank had come. You had a few banks which disappeared into history. Times Bank, Bank of Punjab, Centurion Bank. They are all remnants of history now. But you have still a few which are surviving, like IndusInd Bank. Sometimes during the early noughties, or what you call, the first decade of the 21st century, in banking, State Bank Group started becoming irrelevant. State Bank commissioned a survey. It said that what is it the customers want to know and learn from us. And this surveys went around asking which is the bank you would like to go to, which is the largest bank, which is the best bank. State Bank was the largest bank, largest number of branches, largest number of ATM, largest number of clients. But across 75% of the respondents about this banking survey said it's some other bank. And when these results came to the State Bank of India top management, they refused to believe it. But somehow somebody took the courage and told that we need to do something because and the State Bank ran a campaign. And it said, but State Bank is the best. State Bank is the largest. Unfortunately, the campaign was not very popular within the State Bank's elite group. The casualty was the person who ran the campaign. That was my immediate predecessor. And that person had been kicked out because it was a campaign which nobody liked. And my job was to get the results, but without the displeasure within the organization. And the fact was that SBI was the largest bank. And large means being the biggest. But it was not the biggest in any of the major activities. It was the largest in corporate banking because of the sheer balance sheet size. It had the largest profit. It had the largest number of branches. It had the largest number of ATMs. So they were all probably accidents of history or whatever be it. But where it mattered to the client, where people would bring their accounts, where people would bring their trust for the next generation of banking, SBI was in the preferred bank. And I was given by the chairman, once again, I am in the same lineage. Mr. O.P. Bhatt was the chairman in those days. He was, just before taking over as chairman, he was the MD of State Bank of Travancore. So O.P. Bhatt's mandate to me was, can you get this bank to be the largest player in every activity it undertakes? It was very tough. It meant that I had to beat HDFC in home loans. I had to beat ICICI in car loans. I had to beat both HDFC and ICICI in a lot of other loans. We had to make certain that we do more cross-selling. We had to make certain that we get more profits. It was the biggest challenge of strategy. And I was the most helpless person in the entire banking, because if you don't know State Bank, you would not know what kind of a dilemma I was in. I was a chief general manager. A chief general manager you would probably see as the head of Kerala, responsible with 3 or 4 GMs under him, with a half a dozen of deputy GMs, some 25-50 regional managers, an army of branch managers. He barks an order, I want deposit, and everybody goes there, all like the ants. They'll all scurry all around, gather deposits. I was a chief general manager. My army was 7 strong. And their problem was that they said, sir, you are telling me something, but how do I get it done? And I was very lucky, I also didn't know what I had to do. Second is that I had a team which was in some way dispirited because they had seen the predecessor being pushed out. They had seen not one, they had seen one after one. The average time spent by a chief general manager personal banking at the time of my taking over, my immediate 3 predecessors, the average period was 4.5 months. So I gave myself 5 months. I will beat the average. Second, 7 support officers, deputy GMs. One already told you are worthless, we are sending you to inspection and audit department. You are good only for auditing. Another was so badly fired that lady said, I am resigning. Third person given to me because that person was not wanted by another department, said that we have to dump, send them to personal banking business unit. Why? Because that is where nothing happens. I got a place which was the pits of the State Bank of India. And I believe that is my greatest success. And I had no operating arm. If I had to do business, I had to get it done from the circle chiefs. And no circle chief would want to listen to another CGM who is actually junior to them. So the typical problem of all power-based organizations. So I had to overcome the hierarchy. I had to get people this thing. And I went back to that old lessons I learned. First lesson, focus. Second lesson, courage. Third lesson, teamwork. And I created a team with support from a lot of people. There are a lot of people I had to thank for that, including the chairman. And at some point of time, I said, I am getting my marching order. Because after 4.5 months, I had still not given any result. And at that time, when the Central Management Committee meets, the impatience of the chairman actually shone out. So I probably got a marching order on that day. But after half an hour, somebody went and told him that you can transfer him, but who will you bring in his place? So I survived. But I survived, but by that time I had built a team. Because one, I said, nobody is worthless. You all contribute. Number 2, ideas are supreme. And if you have the right ideas, you can implement. Third, you have to have the power of persuasion. You can persuade anybody to do the right thing. And if you tell people is the right thing, it will happen. And we took up some projects. One, we said we are going to rebuild the home loan system of the State Bank. Second, and we put a team. And that was the DGM who was actually being transferred because he was considered a failure. We told him that that was a temporary feeling of somebody, don't bother. Now you are working with me. We are the team. And we know we can do this. So we looked at home loans and we decided what strategies we will do. Let me not bore you with the detailed strategies. But we picked up 4 different things. We said we have to improve our sourcing. We have to improve our relationship with the supply side of the home loans. We have to improve the fulfillment side of the home loan. We need to improve the workflow in the bank. We need to automate the workflow. And we had everything present. We had the systems. But everyone in the system was blaming someone else, saying that this is not working. We said that we are going to repair the system. So I went around. There are 14 State Bank circles. I visited 14 State Bank circle headquarters and talked to people. And then we brought them back. We put them in a meeting here and we said, you fight it out. Is the sourcing MPST man wrong or right? Is it the RICPC sanctioning of the right or wrong? Is it the instruction which is right or wrong? Is it technology right or wrong and all that? In the end, they stopped fighting with themselves. And the second is that we said we have to discover. I got support from the chairman. We said let's launch a campaign. And we gave them very attractive prices, which was very unusual in the State Bank of India. In State Bank, they never used to do such things. So we did that. And for the first time, we started overtaking one bank after another. Some good things happened in between. The interest rates, there was a crisis, and there was that what is today known as the teaser rate. So we were first off the block with the teaser rate, so that gave us some advantage. But we had the system to implement it. We had the people to speed up. There was a day, there was a closure day of a teaser rate. The first time it happened, the 31st March 2008 in Bombay, in RACPC Mumbai. We had 700 pending applications. We extended, saying that this will be allowed for another 20 days. And something unusual in the State Bank of India, that this kind of popularity of a product happened, and we were actually able to do that. We won that battle. In 2009, March, SBI became the largest player in the home loans, building and assignment. We did the same thing with car loans. My best achievement there was to build the SBI Tata Nano booking finance program. Tata Nano was a product with a lot of hype, a lot of expectations. But that was bombing in terms of the bookings which was happening. And we came out with this, and actually it got 3 lakh bookings because of our loan scheme. That was a big success, and it built connection between SBI and a corporate entity for the first time. We started flexing our muscles and delivering things specifically geared for that. That was a change which I did. We went to the army. You wouldn't believe, Indian Army never used to trust its Jawans enough about cash, that they would not pay them full salary. They will pay them only expense amount, kharchi. Captain will agree. So if a Jawan works for a month, he will go to his captain, and Jawan will say, today is payday. So the Jawan will say, sir, I need 50 rupees. So he will be paid 50 rupees. What happens to the rest? That's kept with the army as group fund or army source fund or something. And we went to army headquarters and said that you are recruiting intelligent, matriculate people today into army. So why do you still have to continue with this British system? Can you not allow them to open the account? It took around 7 months, 8 months for us to discuss and all that. Finally, army said, yes, we can try, but we would like you to do a pilot. So we went and did a pilot. They said, you have to do it in the most difficult place. You do it in Delhi, it is easy. Any bank can do it. But army men do not stay in Delhi all the time. They do not stay in Mumbai also. They are somewhere on the border. They are in Rajasthan. They are in Northeast. They are in Uttaranchal. They are in Kashmir. They are in Siachen. They are in Ladakh. And they gave us 3 places. One was a cantonment in Lucknow. Second was Rajouri, which is on the Indo-Pakistan border. Third was in Ladakh. And we sent people to 3 places. I went to 2 of those places, but I felt I was not fit enough to go to Ladakh, because there you start getting problems because of the rarefied air. So once again, it was courage to accept that challenge. We took that and we proved that it can be done, and army signed first memorandum of undertaking. And within 6 months, SBI got 10 lakh savings accounts. And army salary account became the single largest liability deposit offering of the State Bank of India. That was this thing. So by the time I left, this lady who had wanted to resign, she said, no, can I withdraw my resignation? So I asked somebody, can you? Then they said, no, she cannot resign, withdraw. It's been decided she has to go and I'm not allowing her to withdraw. She has to leave. I went to the boss and said that I now have a person who trusts me. I have a person who I trust, and we are trying to do good things, and you think that we are doing good things. So can you let her stay? She said, okay, she can stay, but what she will do with you, there is no position. I said, you have to make that position for her, because you want me to deliver. So allow me to choose, let me create a position. So I was given that freedom. Said, you can keep her. She withdrew her resignation. She stayed for another 4 years with the bank, retired on the day she was supposed to retire. Incidentally, she was my batchmate also. That, once again, I think takes courage and conviction. So I believe I did it. The other man who was going to inspection, I got that order cancelled. Because at some point of time, I think my conviction and not my better judgment was recognized. But sometimes conviction itself becomes the better judgment, so it happened. So I learned the fifth point is then if you have conviction, you can have courage, you can win any battle. And that I think has stood me in good stead. I think today if you ask, people will say I am a good banker, I am a good retail banker. No one will know that I was a strategist for the bank. No one would know that I was one of the best small scale industries analysts of the bank. So my past history is now overtaken by my recent past history. And my latest management learning is you are what you did yesterday. Rest is forgotten. And maybe I may be remembered for what I did in SBT, I do not know. Jury is out there. Anyway, I am very happy to the management team here, the Calicut Management Association, to allow me to talk, to be a public personality, which is not my normal self, and to share this wonderful evening. I think probably I realize there is more to myself than I ever realized before. Thank you so much for such a patient listening. Thank you. Have a great evening.
I think we just heard the history of Indian banking over the last 30 to 40 years, how it has evolved, how it has transformed itself. I once again thank Mr. P.K. Ahmed for getting such a wonderful speaker. Over to Mr. V.K.S. Menon for presentation of the memento and felicitation. This is actually a painting by National Award winner artist Francis Cordon. He won the National Award in the year 2004.